The question is, I guess the current controversy is whether Shanahan should have played RG3. I don't see it as a controversy. I see it as a legitimate question. I really like, what Shanahan said, which was he's going to second guess himself because that's what everybody would do. It's a logical decision. The guy clearly was hurt by the end of that second drive, was a shadow of his Dallas self. And Dallas was already a marginalized Robert Griffin III. So at that point, and the Redskins significantly didn't score a point after that. They really didn't come close to scoring a point, although they had a 3rd and long at one point there when it was still 14-13, and Leonard Hankerson dropped what would have been a first down. It looked like he could have picked up 10, 15 more yards after the catch. That might have put him in field goal range.
Leonard Hankerson from?
Illinois.
The U.
Oh, Indiana.
The U.
The U.
How is this Indiana?
Huh?
How is this Indiana?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a
is
U.
this Indiana?
Right? It's a U.
The U.
Yeah.
Miami.
Yeah. Why do you guys get to be the U?
We're not the U.
Oh, you're not?
Indiana?
What are you? I don't know.
IU.
Right. All right. Well, I don't know. No one knows. No one cares.
Okay. Glad we did this.
Tufts. So the controversy about RG3, I don't think it's a controversy, it's a question. And the idea that it's sort of being hyped and Shanahan make a mistake is, again, sort of, to me, an example of irresponsible nature of the conversation in sports journalism. Like, he was a guy who was hurt. He's obviously the best player. There's a risk reward.
Yeah.
We're not doctors. My understanding of that injury is that injury couldn't get worse. What my fear was for Griffin and why I would have taken him out, and JR and I were speaking of this before the show, is that it's not so much that he's going to re-injure that knee, it's that he was exposed to so many other injuries because he can't protect himself. And a quarterback in the NFL who can't protect himself to the level that he's accustomed to is a danger. And in fact, he did hurt that knee, but he didn't so much hurt that knee because it was already hurt. He hurt that knee because he couldn't figure out where to stand. He couldn't figure out where to put that knee. He was in pain. Clearly, you saw him grimacing. And a guy in pain is more susceptible to getting hurt. He couldn't even get rid of the ball on a couple of those sacks because he couldn't move enough to make the throw. So I would have had him out of there, but I totally get why you wouldn't have. It's the playoffs. He's your best player, and you think this guy will create some magic. One play, he'll create some magic, and we'll get it going. And if the Redskins had scored one touchdown after they were up 14, after they got those first two, the game might well have been different. I think if Griffin doesn't get hurt, there's a good chance the Redskins win that game.
Now, I understand why you guys would say put in Kirk Cousins over Robert Griffin. I totally understand that.
You mean
KC3.
KC3, yes.
Excuse me. KC3. But in my opinion, even with a hurt RG3, he gives you a better chance of winning than Kirk Cousins does. Kirk Cousins came in and threw like 4 passes in that one game that he won. And in the games that he played, he threw like
he threw for 300 yards against the Browns. He played well against the Browns.
It was against the Browns. It was the fact is, if they were to do it all over again, what do you have? Like 4 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, I believe, on the year. Did Kirk Cousins? In my opinion, if they were to do it over again, I would still pick RG3. Maybe I would have put in Kirk Cousins later on in the game when you badly needed that drive and he simply couldn't move because he re-injured his knee. But even to start, at least going into halftime, I would still play Robert Griffin.
Well, the issue to me was, halftime is not the significant marker of the game. The marker is at the end of that second drive. That's when he got hurt. And once you saw him come out after that and saw him as addled as he was, he had that 9-yard run in the fourth quarter.
Where he just kind of gingerly.
He looked like my dad. He needed the hurricane to get to the sideline. And then they got the tight shot, and he's wincing. He's wincing, and what I love is that he still picked up 9 yards.
Yeah.
He can barely
They kind of
move.
let him pick up 9 yards.
Yeah, it was like the
Seahawks.
Seahawks. The Seahawks were like, look, we're going to give you this one play. We respect you. We're going to give you this one play.
Surprisingly.
So, I would have had him out, but I get why you wouldn't have. But I think what seems to me is that Griffin lied to Shanahan. Players are allowed to lie about this stuff, but he was not honest about the degree of his pain or lack of mobility after that initial injury. And Kirk Cousins is competent. I think the fact is once Griffin got hurt and it was 14-0, odds are the Redskins lose that game.